Elliott Smith, a true master of melancholy, made sad but incredibly beautiful music that continues to touch the hearts of millions today. His songs often deal with personal issues ranging from depression, trauma, and addiction. And while these dark themes appear in much of Smith's music, they're arguably nowhere as explicit as in the lyrics of his 1995 self-titled, a record that's gone down in history as one of the most brutally honest depictions of substance abuse of all time. But are the lyrics confessional or just symbolic? And do they have any deeper meaning? Join me as we explore the music and lyrics of Elliott Smith, an album which he himself called his darkest by far. During his relatively short solo career, Elliott Smith managed to put out 5 studio albums, get nominated for an Oscar, and equally be hailed as one of the greatest singer-songwriters of his generation. His music has been described as a unique mix of Nick Drake for his intricate picking patterns and soft whispery vocals, combined with the lyrical imagery of Bob Dylan, the lush vocal harmonies of Simon and Garfunkel, and the melodic ingenuity of the Beatles. Compared to later albums, Self-Titled is a very minimal record, clocking in at around 40 minutes. It's a collection of 12 songs, with Smith mainly on the acoustic guitar, occasionally incorporating other instruments such as drums, electric guitar, and harmonica. Smith recorded the album on an 8-track Tascam 38 in true DIY fashion, and it has an extremely rough edge, full of what would normally be considered imperfections, such as tape hiss, creaking sounds, and the loud noise of his fingers sliding across the guitar neck. These flaws, however, work to the album's advantage, giving it a very pure and honest feel. Furthermore, Smith's vocals are so up close and have such a presence, you'd think you were right there in the room with him. All this makes for, in my opinion, one of the most deeply intimate records of all time.
Dreadful sorry.
While 8 tracks was double the amount he used on his debut, Roman Candle, Smith used the additional tracks economically and with intent. In the following extract from William Todd Schultz's biography Torment Saint, mixing assistant Leslie Uppinghouse recounts Smith's recording technique. What struck Uppinghouse most was a technique Elliott had perfected nearly uniquely, his ubiquitous, masterful double tracking. For the vocals, there tended to be a minimum of 2 to 3 tracks, although some songs had even more. Track 1 comprised the main vocal. Track 2 repeated that vocal identically. Then track 3 added slight harmonies. He could sing multiple versions of vocals, pitch perfect, each exactly the same, with no deviation at all. Entire songs from start to finish. Through this technique, Smith provides extra life and vibrancy. The album never feels massive, but it definitely feels larger than it really is. And at some points, the songs have such a punch to them, you begin to question if it's not a full band playing, rather than just a one-man show. Along with this hypnotic use of double tracking, Smith's incredible lyrics also gives his music a very dreamlike quality. Smith had a college degree in philosophy and was a big reader of the greats, such as Kierkegaard, Dostoevsky and Freud, who we'll get back to in a bit. So to say he had his way with words would be an understatement. In fact, Smith was able to paint beautifully vivid pictures with his lyrics, sucking the listener into his world with the same ease as other masters before him, like Leonard Cohen or Bob Dylan. The latter, according to Smith himself, ranking number 1 in his pantheon. Just take gorgeous lines like "The street's wet, you can tell by the sound of the cars," or "The moon is a light bulb breaking," that simultaneously say so much while saying so little. Now, speaking about the lyrics, Self-Titled has earned a reputation for its blunt descriptions of drug abuse, particularly heroin addiction. For example, Coming Up Roses speaks of cold white brothers in your blood, single file of an arm that's got death in it, and the odd strumming of needle in the hay perfectly captures the tense, restless mood of a junkie looking to score. Gonna walk, walk, walk downstairs to the man. He's gonna make it all okay. Also being a clear reference to the original dope band, Velvet Underground, who penned classics like I'm Waiting for the Man, Run, 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 and of course, due to lyrics like these, fans have long speculated whether the album is autobiographical, but both Friends and Smith himself have refuted this. Rather, Smith's lyrics mix allegory and observation, on the one hand drawing inspiration from what was going on around him in Portland, Oregon at the time. You see, before becoming the hipster haven that it is today, Portland was a widely different place. In Torment Saint, the city is described as not at all a very light-hearted place, gloomy, somber, and heroin-drenched. Even the venues, like Satyricon, were toilets. Friend and publicist Dorian Gary went on. That song was more about what was going on in the Pacific Northwest, in the small music community in the early 90s, and how badly drugs were infiltrating it. On the other hand, Smith's lyrics are also metaphorical. He explained, "Everyone read the songs at a very surface level. They wanted to know why there were so many songs about heroin, but I used dope as a vehicle to talk about dependency. I could have used love as that vehicle, but that's not where I was." So, observation and allegory. Got it. However, in my opinion, I think Smith's metaphors go deeper than just mere dependency. Earlier in the video, we touched on the father of psychoanalysis, Sigmund Freud. Freud famously theorized that two opposing forces constantly compete and direct people's actions. The life drive, Eros, seeks to avoid pain and promote reproduction and health. On the other hand, the death drive, Thanatos, is expressed through, for instance, aggression, risky behavior like addiction, and reliving trauma. Smith will have been well aware of Freud's theory. Due to his father being a psychiatrist, he had read Freud's lectures, and at one point he even imagined himself following in his father's footsteps. Examining Smith's lyrics from a Freudian perspective, we find that Thanatos, the death drive, largely guides the character's actions. An alcoholic is drinking himself into slow-mo. Someone is reliving their nightmares, and someone else is waiting for the train that only goes one way. Heroin constantly emerges as the most frequent symbol of death. Your arm's got death in it, remember? And even the cover, I think, can be viewed through this Freudian lens, depicting two people falling as a visual representation of their subconscious drive to end it all. No doubt, this internal struggle between life and death comes across the strongest in the heartbreaking "The White Lady Loves You More," which Smith wrote from the perspective of someone in a relationship with an addict. At the end of each verse, the addict succumbs to the death drive, choosing the white lady, heroin, dependency, or whatever you want to call it, over life and love. Chilling stuff.
The white lady loves you.
I think everybody has those two irreconcilable
Impulses.
constant, doing battle with themselves that way every day, all the time, and sometimes it sucks. But other times...
Again, according to Freud, we all constantly fight this subconscious battle, and maybe that's why Smith's lyrics resonate with so many people, regardless if they've experienced addiction or not. All this, of course, is just speculation. Smith understood the power of ambiguity and deliberately left it vague. He often wrote from various perspectives, switching between first, second, and third person. And let's not forget, he ended the album with the line, "I just told the biggest lie," leaving not only the final song, but really the whole album open to interpretation. So, if there ever was a deeper meaning to Elliott Smith's self-titled, I'm sure he would agree when I say that it's up to us listeners to decide for ourselves. Fast approaching its 30-year anniversary, Self-Titled was released in July of 1995. It was called a masterpiece of minimal folk pop and became a stepping stone for Elliott Smith's future success. On later records, Smith realized his musical ambitions in grander, more orchestral ways. And even though they may contain some of his best songs, I can say without a doubt that Self-Titled is my favorite as a whole. Smith deserves immense praise for being able to write such beautiful songs about the ugliest of topics. And apart from that, the album just flows incredibly well. Not a single filler. But above all, I think it's simply his most sincere work. It's just Elliott, an acoustic guitar, and the spaces in between. In fact, Smith didn't even intend to make an album. He only wanted to, quote, put stuff to tape. There's something so pure about that. Just raw, unfiltered emotion pouring out of him, with no audience in mind. Needless to say, the world lost an enormous talent when Elliott Smith sadly passed away in 2003. But we ought to at least take some comfort in that he'll live forever inside the records, continuing to softly whisper in our ears.